job posting had been simple enough. Dam maintenance technician needed for remote facility in the northern wilderness. 6-month contract. Room and board included. No experience necessary. The pay was exceptional. Almost too good to be true. But Marcus Chen had been unemployed for 8 months, and his savings account was reaching dangerous levels. He submitted his application on a Tuesday and received a phone call the following morning. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman who introduced herself as Helen from Regional Water Management. She asked him 3 questions. Could he work alone for extended periods? Yes. Did he have any medical conditions that would prevent him from performing physical labor? No. Was he comfortable following strict protocols without deviation? Absolutely. She told him the job was his if he wanted it. Marcus accepted before she finished explaining the benefits package. 2 weeks later, Marcus found himself in the passenger seat of a weathered pickup truck, bouncing along a dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere. The driver was a man named Gerald, somewhere in his 60s, with skin like worn leather and eyes that rarely blinked. Gerald had met him at a small town called Pinehaven, the last point of civilization before the wilderness swallowed everything. They had been driving for 3 hours, and Marcus had not seen another vehicle, another building, or another person since they left. The forest pressed in on both sides of the narrow road. Tall pines and ancient oaks formed a canopy so dense that the afternoon sun barely penetrated. The air inside the truck smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke. Gerald had not spoken more than a dozen words since they began the journey. Marcus tried making conversation twice, but received only grunts in response. He eventually gave up and watched the trees slide past his window. The dam appeared suddenly, as if the forest had been hiding it until the last possible moment. One moment, Marcus saw nothing but trees, and the next moment, they emerged into a clearing, and there it stood. It was massive, a concrete wall that stretched across a gorge like a giant had placed it there as a barricade against the mountains beyond. Water pooled behind it, forming a lake that disappeared into the distance, dark and still as glass. Below the dam, a river continued its journey through the wilderness, considerably smaller than it must have been before the dam was built. Gerald pulled the truck to a stop in front of a small building near the base of the dam. It was a simple structure, single story, built from cinder blocks and painted a faded green that might have been cheerful once, but now just looked tired. A satellite dish perched on the roof like a metal flower reaching for the sky. A generator hummed somewhere behind the building, a constant mechanical drone that Marcus knew he would stop noticing within a few days. The older man finally spoke as he turned off the engine. "This is it, your home for the next 6 months." They climbed out of the truck. The air was colder here, and Marcus pulled his jacket tighter. Gerald walked to the back of the truck and began unloading Marcus's belongings: 2 duffel bags, a backpack, and a box of books. Everything Marcus owned that mattered fit into a truck bed with room to spare. "Come on," Gerald said, carrying one of the duffel bags toward the building. "I'll show you around before I go." The interior was sparse, but functional. A main room served as combined kitchen and living area. A couch that had seen better days sat against one wall, facing a small television that Gerald explained only worked for DVDs. No signal reached this far into nowhere. A kitchenette occupied the opposite corner, equipped with a refrigerator, a 2-burner stove, and a sink. A hallway led to a bedroom barely large enough for a twin bed and a dresser, and a bathroom with a shower stall that looked like it might have been installed sometime in the previous century. Gerald set the duffel bag down and walked to the kitchen counter. A binder sat there, thick and black, with the words "Operations Manual" printed on the spine in faded white letters. He picked it up and held it out to Marcus. "Everything you need to know is in here," Gerald said. "Read it tonight. Read it again tomorrow. Keep reading it until you can recite it in your sleep." Marcus took the binder. It was heavier than he expected. "Is the job really that complicated?" "The job is simple," Gerald replied. "Following the rules is what matters." "What rules?" Gerald pointed at the binder. "All in there. Most important thing you need to understand is the sirens. There are 3 different siren patterns. Each one means something different. Each one requires specific actions on your part. You deviate from those actions, and bad things happen." "What kind of bad things?" Gerald's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been memory or might have been fear. "The kind you don't come back from. The last guy who had this job, he thought he knew better. Thought the rules were suggestions. We found his body 3 weeks after he disappeared. What was left of it anyway?" Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "What happened to him?" "He didn't follow the rules," Gerald said simply. "Don't make the same mistake." The older man spent the next hour walking Marcus through the basic operations: how to check the water levels using the gauge system, how to monitor the pressure readings on the ancient computer terminal in the corner, how to perform the daily inspections of the dam face, looking for cracks or signs of structural weakness, how to operate the backup generator if the primary failed, how to use the radio to call for help if needed, though Gerald mentioned that response time would be measured in days, not hours. Finally, Gerald showed him the sirens. There were 3 mounted on poles around the facility, each one capable of producing sounds that would carry for miles. The control panel was in the main room, a metal box attached to the wall near the door. 3 switches, each labeled Pattern 1, Pattern 2, Pattern 3. Above the switches, a receiver that would activate the sirens automatically based on signals from sensors scattered around the area. "You don't control when they go off," Gerald explained. "The system is automatic. Your job is to respond correctly when they do. Pattern 1 is the most common. You'll hear it maybe once a month. Pattern 2 happens less frequently, maybe 3 or 4 times during your contract. Pattern 3, he paused. Pattern 3 is rare. Pray you never hear it. What triggers them? Marcus asked. Sensors in the water, seismic monitors, weather stations. The system is monitoring a lot of variables. When those variables reach certain thresholds, the sirens activate. Your job isn't to understand why. Your job is to do what the manual says when they sound. Gerald checked his watch, an analog thing with a cracked face that probably predated Marcus by several decades. I need to go. Sun sets early this time of year, and that road is dangerous in the dark. You have my radio frequency in the manual. Weekly check-ins are mandatory. Every Sunday at noon, if you miss a check-in, someone will come looking for you eventually. Eventually. Like I said, response time is measured in days. You're on your own out here. That's what the job is. Can you handle it? Marcus looked around the small building, then out the window at the massive dam beyond. 6 months. Exceptional pay. How hard could it be to follow some rules and maintain a dam in the wilderness? Yeah, I can handle it, Gerald nodded. Read the manual. Follow the rules. Don't try to be clever. The dam has been here for 70 years. It knows what it's doing better than you do. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. One more thing. Don't go in the water. Ever. Doesn't matter how hot it gets. Doesn't matter how tempting it looks. Stay out of the water. That's not in the manual, but it should be. Then he was gone, and Marcus was alone. The first thing Marcus did after Gerald left was open the operations manual. The binder was organized into sections with colored tabs. Daily operations, maintenance procedures, emergency protocols, safety guidelines, and at the very back, printed on yellow paper that stood out from the white pages surrounding it, a section titled Siren Response Procedures. Marcus flipped to that section and began reading. Pattern 1 was described as a rising and falling tone, like a classic air raid siren from old war movies. It indicated elevated water levels in the reservoir when Pattern 1 sounded. Marcus was to immediately proceed to the observation platform at the top of the dam. Visually inspect the spillways to ensure they were not blocked, and radio in his findings to the regional office. He was to remain on the observation platform until the siren stopped, which could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. Under no circumstances was he to leave the platform early. Under no circumstances was he to approach the water's edge. Pattern 2 was a steady, uninterrupted tone that lasted for exactly 60 seconds, repeated every 5 minutes. It indicated seismic activity in the area. When Pattern 2 sounded, Marcus was to immediately secure all equipment in the facility, turn off the primary generator, and move to the designated safe zone, a reinforced section of the building marked with yellow and black striping. He was to bring the emergency radio and the first aid kit. He was to remain in the safe zone for a minimum of 6 hours after the last siren repetition, even if everything seemed fine. Under no circumstances was he to go outside during a Pattern 2 event. Under no circumstances was he to attempt to inspect the dam until the mandatory waiting period had passed. Pattern 3 was described in more detail than the others, and the language was notably more urgent. Pattern 3 consisted of 3 short blasts followed by 1 long blast, repeating continuously. It indicated a critical situation that the manual did not specify. When Pattern 3 sounded, Marcus was to immediately gather the emergency pack stored under his bed, exit the building through the rear door, and proceed directly to a location marked on the map as Waypoint Echo. The instructions emphasized directly, underlined 3 times. He was not to deviate from the marked trail for any reason. He was not to stop moving until he reached Waypoint Echo. He was not to look at the dam. He was not to look at the water. He was not to respond to any sounds he might hear. He was not to acknowledge anything he might see. At Waypoint Echo, he would find a shelter stocked with supplies. He was to remain in that shelter until personnel arrived to retrieve him. The manual noted that retrieval might take up to 2 weeks. The final paragraph of the Pattern 3 section was written in bold, capital letters. Failure to follow these instructions exactly will result in death. This is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. Follow the instructions. Marcus read the entire section 3 times, trying to understand what kind of situation would require such dramatic protocols. The manual provided no explanation, just instructions. He considered radioing Gerald to ask for clarification, but decided against it. The older man had been clear. Read the manual. Follow the rules. Don't try to be clever. He spent the rest of the evening reading through the other sections. The daily operations were straightforward. Check the gauges. Record the readings. Inspect the dam face. Report anything unusual. The maintenance procedures were equally simple. Clean the debris screens weekly. Test the backup generator monthly. Lubricate the spillway gates quarterly. The job really was easy as long as he followed the procedures. Night fell while he was reading. The darkness beyond the windows was absolute, unmarred by any light pollution. Marcus had lived in cities his entire life, was accustomed to the ambient glow that never really went away, even after midnight. This darkness was different. This darkness was complete. When he looked out the window, he saw nothing. Not the dam, not the trees, not even his own reflection, just black. He made himself dinner from the supplies stocked in the kitchen. Canned soup heated on the stove, bread that would probably be stale within a week, an apple from a bowl on the counter. He ate sitting on the couch, watching a DVD from the collection he found in a cabinet under the television, an action movie from the 90s that he had seen before. The The familiar dialogue was comforting, made the isolation feel less oppressive. He went to bed early, exhausted from the travel and the stress of a new job in a new place. The bedroom window looked out toward the dam, and as Marcus lay in the dark, he could see lights on the structure. Small white lights that marked the observation platform at the top, larger floodlights at the base that illuminated the spillways. The lights reflected off the water, creating a mirror image that made it hard to tell where the solid structure ended and the reflection began. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep. The generator hummed in the background. The building creaked as the temperature dropped and the materials contracted. Somewhere in the distance, an animal made a sound that might have been a howl or might have been something else entirely. He pulled the blanket tighter and eventually drifted off. The first week passed without incident. Marcus fell into a routine quickly. Wake at dawn, perform the morning inspection, record the gauge readings, make breakfast, spend the afternoon reading or watching DVDs or walking the perimeter of the facility, perform the evening inspection, record the gauge readings, make dinner, sleep, repeat. The isolation bothered him less than he expected. He had always been comfortable with his own company, preferred solitude to crowds. The silence of the wilderness was peaceful in a way that city noise never was. He could hear things out here. Bird songs whined through the trees, the constant rush of water from the spillways. Natural sounds that his brain had forgotten existed. He spoke to Gerald during the Sunday radio check-in. The conversation was brief. Gerald asked if everything was functioning properly. Marcus confirmed that it was. Gerald asked if there had been any siren activations. Marcus said no. Gerald reminded him to read the manual and follow the rules. Then the call ended. The first siren came on a Thursday afternoon during the second week. Marcus was outside, walking along the base of the dam, performing his daily visual inspection of the concrete face. The siren cut through the quiet like a knife, a rising and falling tone that echoed off the surrounding hills and seemed to come from everywhere at once. Pattern 1. Marcus ran, not toward the building, but toward the access stairs that led to the top of the dam. His boots rang on the metal steps as he climbed, taking them 2 at a time. The siren continued its undulating wail. By the time he reached the observation platform, his lungs burned and his legs ached. The platform was a metal grating that extended from the top of the dam, allowing a clear view of the entire reservoir. Marcus stood at the railing and looked out. The water was calm, dark, reflecting the gray clouds that had moved in that morning. The spillways were visible to his left, 2 massive concrete channels that could divert water away from the dam. If the reservoir level got too high, no water flowed through them now. The screens that prevented debris from entering the spillways were clear. He pulled out the radio and called in his report. Base, this is Dam Station 7. Pattern 1 activation. Spillways clear, no blockages visible. Water level appears normal. Static answered him for a moment, then a voice he did not recognize. Not Gerald, but someone else, a woman who sounded bored. Copy that. Station 7. Maintain position until cessation. Understood. Marcus stood on the platform and waited. The siren continued. Below him, the dam wall dropped away into shadow. Above him, clouds moved slowly across the sky. Before him, the reservoir stretched into the distance, disappearing around a bend where the drowned valley continued. He tried to imagine what this place had looked like before the dam was built. A river flowing through a gorge, trees and rocks, wildlife. Now it was a lake, and whatever had been here before was buried under hundreds of feet of water. 30 minutes passed before the siren cut off mid-wail. The silence that followed was jarring, made his ears ring. Marcus waited an additional 5 minutes, following the protocol exactly, then descended the stairs and returned to the building. He noted the event in the log book, recording the time, duration, and his observations, his first siren activation. Everything had gone according to procedure. That night, he dreamed about the reservoir. He was standing on the observation platform again, looking down at the water, except in the dream, the water was perfectly still, like a mirror. And in that mirror, he could see something moving beneath the surface. Something large, something with too many limbs. He tried to step back from the railing, but found his feet were stuck to the platform. The thing in the water rose toward the surface, growing larger as it approached. Just before it broke through, Marcus woke up. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding. The bedroom was dark. The lights on the dam glowed through the window. Everything was quiet, just a dream. Stress and isolation playing tricks on his mind. He lay back down, but did not sleep again until dawn began to lighten the sky. The third week brought rain. Not a gentle rainfall, but a torrential downpour that lasted for 3 days straight. The reservoir level rose visibly. Marcus checked the gauges every few hours, watched the numbers climb. The spillways activated automatically, diverting excess water. The sound was tremendous, a constant roar that drowned out everything else. Pattern 1 sounded 6 times during the rain. Each time, Marcus climbed to the observation platform, confirmed the spillways were functioning, and radioed in his report. Each time, he stood in the rain and watched the gray water and tried not to think about his dream. Each time, he was careful to stay away from the railing, away from the edge, away from any position where he might accidentally look directly down into the reservoir. On the 4th day, the rain stopped. The clouds broke apart and sunlight returned. The reservoir level stabilized and then began to drop as the spillways continued their work. Marcus performed his inspections and found everything intact. The dam had weathered the storm without issue. That afternoon, he decided to explore the surrounding area. The manual included a map of the facility and the immediate vicinity. Trails marked in red were approved for use. Trails marked in yellow were to be avoided unless necessary. Areas marked in black were strictly off limits. Marcus chose a red trail that led into the forest behind the facility, away from the dam and the reservoir. The trail was well maintained, clear of undergrowth. It wound through the trees, climbing gradually up the hillside. Marcus walked for an hour, enjoying the exercise and the fresh air. Birds sang in the canopy. Squirrels chattered at him from branches. Normal forest sounds. Normal forest sights. It was easy to forget about the isolation, about the strange rules, about the dreams that had been getting worse each night. The trail eventually led to a clearing where he found a wooden structure built against a rock face. A shelter, he realized. This must be Waypoint Echo, the location mentioned in the Pattern 3 procedures. The shelter was simple but solid, built from logs and sealed against the weather. A heavy door secured with a padlock was the only entrance. Marcus tried the lock out of curiosity and found it required a combination. Presumably, the combination was in the emergency pack under his bed. He looked around the clearing. It was peaceful here. The sound of the spillways was barely audible, muffled by distance and trees. He could not see the dam from this vantage point, could not see the reservoir, just forest and rock and sky. He found himself wondering why anyone would need to retreat to this location. What could happen at the dam that would require abandoning the facility and hiding in the woods for 2 weeks? The manual's ominous warnings echoed in his memory. Failure to follow these instructions exactly will result in death. What kind of situation warranted such extreme language? What was the dam hiding? Marcus pushed the thoughts aside. He was letting isolation get to him, seeing mystery where there was probably mundane explanation. Dams were dangerous structures, thousands of tons of water held back by concrete and engineering. If something went wrong, if the structure failed, the resulting flood would be catastrophic. Of course, there were extreme safety protocols. Of course, the language was urgent. That was responsible risk management, nothing more. He walked back to the facility as the sun began to set, made himself dinner, watched a DVD, went to bed, tried not to dream. Pattern 2 came during the 5th week. Marcus was awake when it started, sitting on the couch at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep. The steady tone cut through the silence. 60 seconds of uninterrupted sound that vibrated in his chest. He recognized it immediately and moved. Secure all equipment. He ran to the computer terminal and shut it down properly. Unplugged the refrigerator. Turned off every device that might be damaged by power fluctuations. Turn off the primary generator. He grabbed a flashlight and ran outside to the generator housing. The machine rumbled in its enclosure. He pulled the kill switch and watched it wind down into silence. The lights on the dam went dark, The only illumination came from his flashlight and the moon above. Move to the safe zone. He grabbed the emergency radio and first aid kit from their designated locations and entered the reinforced section of the building. It was a small room, barely larger than a closet, with concrete walls noticeably thicker than the rest of the structure. A bench was bolted to the floor. Supplies lined metal shelves. He sat down and waited. The sirens sounded again, 60 seconds of tone, 5 minutes of silence, 60 seconds of tone. He counted the cycles, trying to determine if he could feel the seismic activity that had triggered the alarm. The building felt solid. No shaking, no vibration. Whatever the sensors had detected was either subtle or had not reached the surface yet. After the 4th cycle, the sirens stopped. Marcus checked his watch and began the 6-hour wait. He tried to stay alert, but exhaustion eventually claimed him. He slept sitting on the bench, his head resting against the concrete wall, and dreamed of things moving beneath the water. When 6 hours had passed, he emerged from the safe zone. Dawn was breaking. He restarted the generator and watched the lights come back on, performed a complete inspection of the facility and the dam. Everything appeared normal. No cracks, no damage. No signs that anything unusual had occurred. He noted the event in the log book and reported it during the next radio check-in. Gerald acknowledged the report and reminded him that he had followed the procedures correctly. That was all that mattered. But Marcus was beginning to doubt that explanation, beginning to wonder if the procedures were about protecting the dam or protecting something else. Something the manual never explicitly mentioned. The dreams were getting worse. Every night now, he dreamed about the reservoir. Sometimes he was standing on the observation platform. Sometimes he was in the water itself, sinking into the dark depths. Sometimes he was inside the dam, walking through concrete corridors that did not exist in reality, searching for something he could not name. Always there was a presence, something aware, something waiting. He started having trouble distinguishing between sleep and waking. Would find himself standing at the window in the middle of the night with no memory of getting out of bed. Would catch glimpses of movement in the water during his inspections, shapes just beneath the surface that vanished when he tried to focus on them. Would hear sounds that had no obvious source, whispers, footsteps, breathing. During the 6th week, Marcus found something during his morning inspection. He was walking along the base of the dam when he noticed scratches on the concrete. Deep gouges that looked fresh, the exposed concrete bright against the weathered surface. The marks were parallel, 4 of them, spaced like fingers dragging across the wall. Except they were high up, at least 10 feet above the ground. Nothing could have made those marks unless it was very tall or could climb the dam face. He reported the finding during his radio check-in. Gerald was silent for a long moment before responding. Did you see what made them? No. They were just there this morning. Have you been following the rules exactly? No deviations? Yes, everything by the book. Another pause. Keep following the rules. Don't try to investigate. If you see anything making marks like that, you retreat to the building immediately and radio in. Understand? What am I looking for? Nothing. You're looking for nothing. Keep your head down and do your job. The call ended abruptly. Marcus stood holding the radio, more confused than before. Gerald's tone had been off, not bored or matter-of-fact like usual. Something else. Concerned, afraid. It was hard to tell through the static and poor connection. More marks appeared over the following days. Always on the dam face. Always high up. Always those same parallel gouges. Marcus started carrying the emergency pack with him during inspections, ready to run if necessary. He mapped the locations of the marks in his mind, trying to find a pattern. They seemed to circle the dam, appearing in new locations each night, as if something was moving around the structure, studying it. The thought made him deeply uncomfortable. Something large enough and strong enough to damage concrete, something that moved at night when he could not see, something that was interested in the dam. He started sleeping with the lights on, started locking the door, even though the manual never mentioned locks, started positioning himself where he could see both the door and the window from the bed. His supplies of canned food were running low, but he could not bring himself to eat much. His appetite had disappeared along with his ability to sleep more than a few hours at a time. During the 7th week, the water level began to drop. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Marcus checked and rechecked his measurements, thinking he must be making an error. The spillways were operating normally. There had been no rain. The inflow should have remained constant, yet the reservoir was losing water faster than physics could explain. He reported the discrepancy during his radio check-in. Gerald seemed unsurprised. Note it in the log. Monitor it daily. Let me know if the rate of change increases. What's causing it? The system self-regulates. Don't worry about it. Gerald, I need to know what's happening out here. The marks on the dam. The water level dropping. The dreams. Something is wrong, and the manual doesn't explain any of it. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, what dreams? Marcus had not meant to mention the dreams. The words had slipped out, exhaustion overriding his filter. He considered lying, saying he misspoke, but something in Gerald's tone suggested the older man already knew. Dreams about the reservoir, about something in the water. They're getting worse. Are you taking anything? Any medications? No. Have you been going in the water? No. I remember what you said. Have you been looking at the water? Staring at it for extended periods? Marcus thought about his inspections, about standing on the observation platform, about his windows that faced the reservoir. It's hard not to look at it. It's right there. Try harder. Keep your eyes on the instruments, on the concrete, on anything except the water itself. The dreams will stop if you stop looking. Why? What's in the water? Nothing. There's nothing in the water. That's the problem. The reservoir is empty in all the ways that matter. That emptiness attracts things that notice when people pay too much attention. Stop looking, and they'll stop looking back. The call ended. Marcus stood in the main room, trying to process what Gerald had said. The reservoir was empty. It was full of water. He could see it from the window, could hear it flowing through the spillways. How could it be empty? Unless Gerald had not been talking about water. Marcus went to the window, but forced himself to look at the frame instead of through it, forced himself to examine the peeling paint and the dusty glass without letting his gaze drift to the expanse of water beyond. It was harder than it should have been. The reservoir seemed to pull at his attention, demanding to be observed. He closed the curtains. That night, he heard something outside. Footsteps on gravel, heavy and slow, circling the building. He lay in bed, paralyzed with fear, listening to the sound move from the front to the side, to the back, to the other side, round and round, never stopping, never changing pace, just walking, endlessly walking. When dawn came, the sound stopped. Marcus forced himself to get up and check outside. Found nothing. No tracks in the gravel, no signs anything had been there. But he knew what he had heard. Knew it was real, regardless of what the evidence suggested. He was starting to understand why the previous maintenance technician had not survived his contract. Pattern 3 came during the 8th week. Marcus was eating lunch when the sirens started. 3 short blasts, 1 long blast, repeating. The sound was different from the other patterns, more urgent, more aggressive. It triggered something primal in his hindbrain that screamed danger. He did not hesitate. Grabbed the emergency pack from under his bed, verified the contents in 3 seconds. Water, food, first aid supplies, radio, flashlight, a piece of paper with the combination to the shelter lock. Everything was there. Exit through the rear door. He burst out of the building and ran toward the trail. Behind him, the sirens continued their pattern. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short, 1 long. The sound chased him into the trees. Proceed directly to Waypoint Echo. The trail stretched ahead. Marcus ran, his boots pounding the dirt. He did not look back, did not look toward the dam, did not look at anything except the path in front of him. The manual had been explicit. Direct meant direct. No deviations, no stops, no acknowledgement of anything except forward movement. He heard something behind him, a sound like metal scraping stone, like something massive dragging itself across concrete. The trees on either side of the trail rustled, though there was no wind. He heard breathing that was not his own, heard whispers in a language he did not recognize. Do not respond to any sounds. Marcus clenched his jaw and ran faster. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He ignored the pain and focused on putting 1 foot in front of the other. The trail climbed. His pace slowed despite his best efforts. He heard footsteps behind him now. The same heavy, slow footsteps from the night at the building. Getting closer, he could feel something behind him. A presence. Massive, wrong. His entire body wanted to turn around, wanted to see what was following him. He kept his eyes forward. Do not acknowledge anything you might see. Movement in his peripheral vision. Shapes between the trees, tall figures that kept pace with him. He focused on the trail. Only the trail. Nothing else mattered. The clearing appeared ahead. Marcus sprinted the final distance and reached the shelter. His hands shook as he fumbled with the lock. The combination. He pulled the paper from his pocket. Read the numbers. Spun the dial. The lock clicked open. He yanked the door and threw himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. Darkness. Complete and absolute. He found the flashlight in his pack and switched it on. The beam revealed a small room with concrete walls. Shelves lined with supplies. A cot in one corner, a bucket in another. This was where he would wait for 2 weeks, alone in the dark while something walked around outside. He sat on the cot and tried to calm his breathing. The sirens were still audible, muted by distance and the thick walls, 3 short, 1 long. How long would they continue? The manual had not specified. Hours passed. Marcus rationed his water and tried not to think about what had chased him up the trail. Tried not to think about what was happening at the dam. The manual said personnel would come for him. He had to trust that. Had to believe rescue was coming. The sirens stopped sometime during the night. The silence that followed was worse. Marcus sat in the dark with his flashlight turned off to conserve batteries and listened to the nothing. No forest sounds, no wind, no animals, just silence so complete it made his ears ache. On the second day, he heard something outside. Not footsteps this time, but scratching. Something dragging claws across the shelter door. Testing it, looking for weakness. The sound continued for hours, and then stopped abruptly. On the third day, the whispers started. Voices speaking in that language he did not understand. Sometimes they sounded close, right outside the door. Sometimes they sounded distant, echoing through the forest. Always they continued, a constant background murmur that made sleep impossible. On the fourth day, Marcus realized he was running low on water. The pack had contained enough for a week if he was careful. But stress and fear had made him careless. He had been drinking too much. By his estimate, he had maybe 3 days of water remaining. If rescue did not come within a week, he would have to make a choice. Stay in the shelter and die of thirst, or venture out and face whatever was waiting. On the 5th day, one of the voices spoke in English. His name, just once. Clearly, Marcus. He did not respond, did not acknowledge he had heard. But his hands tightened on the flashlight, and he fought the urge to scream. On the 6th day, he heard vehicles. The distant rumble of engines. Voices shouting to each other, normal human voices. He moved to the door and waited, listening. The sounds grew closer. Someone banged on the shelter door. "Marcus Chen, are you in there?" A woman's voice. Authoritative. "Yes." His voice was hoarse from disuse. "Yes, I'm here. I'm Captain Williams with Regional Emergency Services. We're here to extract you. I need you to open the door slowly and keep your hands visible." Marcus spun the combination lock and pushed the door open. Sunlight blinded him. He raised one hand to shield his eyes and saw figures in uniform standing in the clearing. 5 people. 2 men, 3 women, all wearing gear that suggested they were prepared for hazardous conditions. One of them held a device that might have been a radiation detector or something similar. Captain Williams was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked at Marcus with an expression that might have been pity. "Are you injured?" "No, just dehydrated." One of the other team members approached with a water bottle. Marcus drank greedily, too thirsty to pace himself. The captain watched him, then nodded to her team. "Do a sweep. Make sure the perimeter is clear." The others spread out, moving through the trees with practiced efficiency. Marcus noticed they all avoided looking toward the dam, kept their eyes on the ground or the trees, never looking in the direction of the reservoir. "What happened?" Marcus asked. "Why did Pattern 3 activate?" "Containment protocol," Captain Williams said. "Happens occasionally, usually resolves itself within a few days." "Containment of what?" "That information is classified. What matters is you followed the procedures and survived. Not everyone does. Your predecessor didn't. Gerald told me he didn't follow the rules. Gerald is required to tell you that. The truth is more complicated. Some people follow the rules perfectly and still don't make it. Others break every protocol and walk away fine. We don't fully understand the variables." Marcus stared at her. "You're telling me my survival was random? That following the manual might not have mattered? I'm telling you the situation is complex, but following the manual improves your odds significantly. So we continue to emphasize that. Would you have preferred we tell you from the beginning that you might die regardless?" Before Marcus could respond, one of the team members called out, "Captain, we have marks here, fresh ones." Williams walked over to examine whatever had been found. Marcus followed despite his exhaustion. In the dirt at the edge of the clearing, something had left tracks. Not animal tracks, not human tracks, long grooves in the earth, parallel sets of 4, spaced wide. As if something had dragged massive clawed hands through the soil. "How long has it been outside the shelter?" one of the team members asked. "Hard to say. Could be hours, could be days." Williams looked at Marcus. "Did you hear anything unusual while you were inside?" He thought about the scratching, the whispers, his name spoken in the darkness. "Yes." "Did you respond?" "No." "Good. That's probably why you're still alive." She turned to her team. "Pack it up. We're moving out. I want to be off this mountain before sunset." They walked back down the trail in formation, Marcus in the center, surrounded by the team. No one spoke. Everyone kept their eyes forward. The trees seemed to watch them pass. Marcus felt the weight of attention from the forest, from the reservoir hidden beyond the ridge. Something was aware they were there. Something was watching them leave. When they reached the facility, Marcus saw that one of the windows had been broken. The glass scattered inside suggested something had hit it from the outside. Hit it hard. His bedroom window, where he had spent so many nights looking out at the water. Williams allowed him 10 minutes to gather his personal belongings, his clothes, his books, anything that mattered. He worked quickly, eager to leave. As he was packing his final bag, he noticed the operations manual on the counter, picked it up, flipped to the yellow pages at the back. There was a new section, one he had not seen before. The paper was the same yellow, the text the same format, but he was certain it had not been there during his first reading. The header read, Post Pattern 3 Procedures. The instructions were brief. If you are reading this, you have survived a Pattern 3 event. You will be extracted from the facility. You will be debriefed. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement. You will be compensated for the remainder of your contract. You may not return to this location. You may not discuss this location. You may not acknowledge this location's existence. Failure to comply will result in termination of contract and possible legal action. The dam thanks you for your service. The dam thanks you. Such a strange phrase, as if the structure itself was aware, grateful, watching. Marcus closed the manual and left it on the counter. Let someone else deal with it. He walked out of the building without looking back. The journey down the mountain took 3 hours. They traveled in 2 trucks, Marcus riding with Captain Williams in the lead vehicle. She asked him questions during the drive. Had he experienced any unusual physical symptoms? Had he seen anything he could describe clearly? Had he felt compelled to return to the reservoir? Marcus answered honestly, knowing the debrief would be thorough. When they reached Pine Haven, Williams directed them to a building on the edge of town. Nondescript, could have been an office or a warehouse. Inside was a conference room where Marcus spent the next 6 hours recounting every detail of his 2 months at the dam. 2 people in suits took notes and asked follow-up questions. They showed him photographs and asked if he recognized any of the shapes. He did not. They showed him documents and asked him to verify dates and times. He did his best. Finally, they presented him with a stack of papers. The non-disclosure agreement. Marcus read through it carefully. The language was absolute. He would never speak about the dam, would never write about the dam, would never acknowledge he had worked at the dam. Violation would result in legal penalties that could include imprisonment. He signed. What choice did he have? He had seen things he did not understand, had survived something that had killed others. If they wanted his silence, they could have it. He wanted nothing more than to forget the entire experience. They gave him a check for the full 6-month contract despite his early departure, gave him a phone number to call if he experienced any lasting effects, gave him a firm handshake and a warning look, and sent him on his way. Marcus took a bus back to civilization, back to the city where he had lived before, back to apartment hunting and job searching and the normal concerns of normal life. He tried to move on, tried to forget, but the dreams never stopped. Every night, he dreamed about the reservoir, about water that was not really water, about emptiness that was not really empty, about something vast and ancient that slept beneath the surface, held in check by concrete and careful protocols, something that noticed when people looked too long, something that reached back when it was reached toward. He stopped sleeping near windows, stopped drinking water from clear glasses where he could see the liquid, stopped going near any body of water larger than a puddle. The fear followed him everywhere, a constant companion. 3 months after leaving the dam, Marcus received a phone call. The voice on the other end was familiar. Gerald, the old man, spoke without preamble. "You've been having dreams." Not a question, a statement. Marcus did not bother asking how Gerald knew. "Yes, they'll fade. Eventually. Takes about a year in most cases. Some people never fully recover, but they learn to manage it." What was it? What was really at that dam? A long pause. Then, have you ever thought about what happens to the places we drown? The valleys we flood to create reservoirs, all those trees and buildings and roads, submerged, forgotten, left to rot in the dark. Sometimes things find those places, things that have nowhere else to go, things that need the dark and the empty and the forgotten. The dam doesn't just hold back water, it holds back everything the water covers. As long as the rules are followed, the containment holds. But when someone breaks the rules, or looks too long, or pays too much attention, the things notice and they try to get out. Why not just drain it, destroy the dam? Because then they would definitely get out. The dam is the only thing keeping them down there. We maintain it, we monitor it, we rotate personnel before they become too connected. That's the job, not maintaining a dam, maintaining a prison. Marcus felt cold despite the warm day. How many people know? Not many. The fewer who know, the better. Knowledge attracts attention. You know now, you'll always know. But the dreams will fade. The fear will lessen. You'll be able to live normally again. Just follow the rules you signed. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it too much. Don't go looking for answers. And whatever you do, stay away from the water. The line went dead. Marcus stood holding the phone, trying to process what Gerald had told him. A prison built to contain things that lived in the drowned valley, things that noticed attention, things that tried to escape. He thought about the marks on the dam, about the sounds in the night, about Pattern 3 and whatever had necessitated his evacuation, about all the dams scattered across the world, holding back water, holding back secrets. How many of them were prisons? How many contained things that should not be released? how many maintenance workers had died or disappeared or gone mad learning truths they should never have known. Marcus deleted the contact information, threw away the papers, tried to forget, but late at night, when the city was quiet and he was alone with his thoughts, he remembered the absolute darkness of the reservoir, remembered the whispers, remembered his name spoken by something that should not have known it, and he wondered if Gerald was right, if the dreams would truly fade, or if he would spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, waiting for the day when something from the drowned valley finally found its way to the surface and came looking for the man who had stared too long into the water. The dam stood in the wilderness, holding back more than water, maintained by people who followed rules they did not fully understand, protecting a world that did not know it needed protection. And beneath the surface, in the dark, empty spaces where light never reached, things waited patiently for the moment when someone would inevitably fail to follow the protocols. Because eventually, someone always did.